Perfect. Welcome everybody to our March DPAC meeting. It's great to see you all as we're coming up to spring break here. Perfect. Yes, welcome everybody to our March DPAC. And I'm going to go ahead and call to order. We acknowledge and are grateful that the work of DPAC and our PACs takes place on the traditional and unceded territories of the Hakinemin-speaking people of the Katzie First Nation and Kwantlen First Nation. We also recognize all our First Nation, Métis, Inuit, and their students and their families in our school communities. We are committed to the ongoing process of reconciliation. If anybody is looking for any information, there is the Indigenous Focus graduation requirement. We do have links on this slide that can take you to information regarding that. Thank you. If somebody could please, we need to adopt the agenda. If somebody could please do that. Do we have anybody moving? Katie? Seconded? Paulina? Okay, any discussion? Nope, pop the poll, please. And a reminder that only DPAC reps vote. Perfect, motion's carried. And approval of the February 24th minutes. They were distributed earlier. Can I have somebody move to accept them as written? Paulina or Katie, seconded by Paulina. Is there any discussion or corrections to the minutes? No? Great. Can we pop the poll, please?
Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend comes, my cycle hums, ready to race to you. These days are all happy days. These days are all share them with me. Goodbye, gray sky, hello blue.
We wanted to close the poll. If anybody's voted.
So right, it can't be wrong. Rocking and rolling all week long.
Great. Motion's carried. My name is Tanya Sargent, and I am this year's chair for SD42 DPAC. Thank you for coming. We were supposed to have the foundry speak this evening, but unfortunately they were not available at the last minute. Something came up, so I believe we have moved them to next month. So we will have, Katie is giving me a thumbs up. Foundry is next month now. Speaking on behalf of Superintendent Harry Dillon, we have Assistant Superintendent Jovo Bikic tonight. Go ahead.
Thanks, Tanya. Good evening, everyone. And it's pronounced Yovo. For those of you that don't know, it's a fun name to pronounce. So no worries, no worries. So thank you for welcoming me and having me as a visitor today, so I can share a little bit of things that are happening in the district. And I will be speaking a little bit about enrollment and where we are with that. But one of the added pieces that I'm going to speak to this evening is the announcement that came from public health and the public health officers. So, so if those of you who have seen the information or listened to it, we have some new guidelines that are going to be coming to us after spring break. Some of those guidelines are being implemented at midnight tonight, but those aren't for the K-12 setting. And so things like masks and those things will stay in place tomorrow. But I think for some of our schools and some of our families, I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of confusion. But in the meantime, we will do what we do to support families and work through those situations as those arise. So some of the changes that are coming and that you'll see is, for example, visitor access. I know that PACs have been very involved for many years. And when I was a principal, I see a couple familiar faces on this call, people, the parents that I've worked with. And so loved having them in the school. And I know it's been a little bit of a challenge as we have different guidelines that we've been under, and those are going to be changing with a little bit more of a routine and return to the sign-in, sign-out procedures. I'm sure that many schools will still be trying to make sure they, as they always have, ensure that visitors are signing into the office and there's awareness of who's in the building and who's coming in and out. That's a conversation that we're also going to be having with elementary principals in an upcoming meeting that we have on April the 14th, because I know that there's questions around how are different things happening in schools, and PACs have those questions as well. So we're going to be doing that work to clarify and work with some consistency between schools, while also respecting that each school has some of their own individual culture around how they work together and create those environments and those cultures. The other change is obviously the personal protective equipment and masks. And so those are no longer going to be required in K-12 schools starting after spring break. And there's still going to be those that I'm sure that's going to be a bit of a change for. And there may be some kids and some staff or adults that still feel comfortable wearing those. And that is a personal choice. And as always, we respect people's personal choices and their comfort levels. In that way, I know myself, it's become such a habit. I walk down the hallway at the district office and I instantly put the mask on, and I'm sure this will be a shift for kids and families, and even as we go into stores in the next little while. So while they're no longer mandated, we need to respect individuals' choice around that. Field trips. Schools are going to be able to return to some more level of normalcy around that as well, especially as we won't have as restrictive requirements provincially around passports, vaccine passports. But there may still be some individual businesses, because when I read the guidelines this afternoon, there may be businesses that choose to continue with some type of system when it comes to what their venue is. And so schools are going to be asked to make sure that if they're considering a field trip, that they avoid anything that may exclude a child if they haven't gone through and had the vaccine or any of those other choices. There is going to be some level of, if schools can't avoid that, and that's the only venue that's possible, there may be, as written in the guidelines, schools can require participants to confirm they're able to meet additional requirements and are able to provide proof of vaccination. But I think in most instances, we would try to avoid that because we want to make sure that children are included in the opportunities that may come up. And I think we also need to be conscious of that we're only going to have about 13 weeks left of the school year when we return from spring break. So that's not a lot of time in a lot of cases to organize things. So I think we have to be, wanting and hopeful and excited about the return. My daughter's in grade 12. I'm thinking about things like graduation and those types of things, but we also want to be respectful of the time that we have to organize those larger things that may be happening. When it comes to things like graduation, let's say, and larger gathering of events, the actual capacity is still 50%. And that 50% capacity continues until what they are saying will be April 7th. So the change stated here is that can return to 100% capacity when the PHO gatherings and events order is lifted. and they expect that to happen on April the 7th. So we'll wait that announcement, and I think with some excitement for many people. But in the meantime, we still need to continue with the 50% gathering capacity. Those are some of the main things that we've seen. And tomorrow morning, the public health and ministry are meeting with superintendents to actually go into further guidance for parents and districts, and our communications team, specifically Irina Pochop, our communications person, is actually putting together some of that information as we just received the guidelines ourselves this afternoon, and are making sure that we communicate those. In terms of illness and self-assessment, it was interesting. If you spend some time, there's still the self-assessment tools that will exist on the websites, and thank you for putting up those links there. Those are still guided by the public health in terms of staying home and when we're ill. And so I actually spent some time this evening going through and doing the public health checklist, and there are some changes that are existing within it. For example, if you say you have a headache, it asks more specificity around that. So it's interesting that those changes are there. But in terms of staying home, there's still people are being encouraged to stay home if they're ill, so they're not transmitting illness, whether it's COVID-19 or otherwise. And they're still isolated amounts of days that are required if someone actually tests positive for COVID-19. So similar to the guidance that's there right now. So those are some of the bigger announcements around the public health orders and the new guidance around COVID-19. In the second piece that I was going to speak to is our enrollment, and a little bit about kindergarten and grade 8 and some of those processes. I think at one of the last DPAC meetings, there was some introduction to the new system that we have. So we've got the portal now where registration, transfers, and withdrawals from kindergarten to grade 12 are done through the online system. And so far, we've actually had quite a bit of success. Always there's going to be hiccups as you implement something new, but overall, it's actually been quite successful in terms of the systems that have been established. We still make sure that as we're going through that process, we follow our policy around district policy when it comes to placement of students and student registrations. We're going to actually project at this point, we're projected to have over 9,600 elementary age students. So that's an increase over this past year in terms of enrollment. And the majority of our schools can only take in catchment students because of the fact that we have a space that we have to be considering when it comes to enrollment. We're especially full in terms of our school capacities in the central east to the far east of the district and in Pitt Meadows. We've seen quite a growth in Pitt Meadows this past year. And we can continue to see that enrollment successful in terms of the systems that have been. So the other thing in terms of our data, we're seeing that our growth will probably continue right until about 2030. When it comes to kindergarten, we've done and gone through the sibling phase and choice phase and the general phase. Those phases have completed. Now we're going to be we've entered into the late phase of kindergarten registration. As of today, we have 1,182 kindergarten students currently enrolled for starting in September. We're projected at 1,200. So we're only 18 students currently away from our projection, which is ahead of where we were last year in terms of how close we were to projection. And so we anticipate that we could be over projection for this year. In those numbers, we got 163 students in French, 30 in Montessori, 12 in environmental, and 4 currently in our Odyssey program. And in grade 8, the initial registration is closed. We're at about 1,200 students in grade 8 as well for September. All students within their catchment got into their catchment schools, and those were granted. Any students that had siblings were able to get into their into their schools. And we are making sure that we're following the process in terms of date and time stamps, as some schools are closed in terms of the space available. So Thomas Haney, Maple Secondary, SRT, and Garibaldi, and Pitt Meadows and Westview do have healthy grade 8 registrations as well, but a little more in terms of physical space in their buildings compared to the other 4 schools. And the transfers for those families that are requesting transfers, the one thing that we've found with our portal system as we've implemented it is that because we have 3 schools involved in a transfer process when it comes to a child registered for grade 8, we have the elementary school, we have the school that the student is in currently registered, and we have the school that the parent may still request a transfer to. That part we're having to use a system still outside the portal, which is filling out a PDF transfer form. So that's already been communicated. It's on the website, and schools that are contacting, they're either through their elementary school or to the high schools, they're being requested to fill out that PDF form to do the request for transfer. And then those are taken to the transfer meetings through the principals, and then they determine whether there's the ability to transfer students based on space, often in a situation where it's one student leaves and then another student can enter into that school. And those are some of the larger updates in terms of our registration. So we're fortunate to be at a time where we have growth from a perspective of we're not dealing with, losing teachers or, declining enrollment, a time that I was a principal. But at the same time, it's now we've got the other challenges of space and trying to make sure that we can maximize the space that we have in our schools, cognizant of that we're, limited by what we can do in terms of expanding when it comes to the way that the funding occurs. So, but I think we've done a really good job as we go into schools and use the space that we have and try to make it and maximize it for the benefit of students and their learning. So those are some of the updates that I'm here to share tonight.
Two years and I'm still muted. Does anybody have, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thanks.
Now, did I say your name? Is it Tanya or Tanya?
It's Tanya. Thank you.
It's Tanya. Thanks, Tanya.
You're welcome. And from the school board trustees, we have Mike Murray this evening.
Great. Thank you, Tanya. My name is Mike and it's pronounced Mike.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyway, privileged to be here tonight. We just had a meeting last night and a couple of weeks ago. So there's been a few things. Notably, last night we did adopt the strategic facilities plan, and that has been in a process of being developed over the last year almost, with a considerable amount of consultation. I'm sure many of you might have participated in some of the surveys and so on. That has included students as well. But just picking up on Yovo's comments about growth, well, one of the reasons we need a facilities plan is because we do have growth projected out to 2030, and where do we put people? How do we address the needs of a growing community? And that's certainly part of it. The other thing, though, I want to highlight with the facilities plan is that it also asks the question, what kind of new educational opportunities do we need to provide our students? Facilities are basically the vessel in which we deliver our educational programs, but we need to know what those programs are going to be first. So that's a big question. And in this particular plan, there were a number of areas that were identified for further discussion and research and so on. And that's what I wanted to say about this plan is there are many things in this plan that are aspirational, that identify that we will need to be adding classrooms onto this school or that school. might need to pursue a new school in a particular location. Many of these things, as the plan in the later stages of the plan, will require much more additional research and discussion and consultation. I think a question came up yesterday about catchment areas, and what was identified is that when we do a catchment area review, it's not simply what we've said in this particular plan. If we're thinking about making changes, we are required and will be doing detailed level of consultation on that sort of thing before it's implemented. But if you have an interest in what's happening in your particular school, there's lots of data there, and I think there is a link on the screen, or available anyway. If you go onto the school district website, you can go to Board of Education Strategic Facilities Plan and find the final document. It's a lengthy one. It's many pages long, but you'll find out more about your school than you probably ever cared to know, in terms of its assessed facility condition, when upgrades are planned, when interior renovations are planned, all of that sort of thing. So it's of great interest, and it's really important that we do this work, because this is what helps us when we go forward to ask the Ministry of Education and the provincial government for the funding. So it's a pretty critical piece of work that has been done. A lot of effort has gone into it by a number of our staff, and we certainly thank them for that. So that was adopted last night by the board. Another thing that we adopted last night was a resolution that was presented by Trustee Dumore. Is Kim here tonight? I'm not hearing her, so I'm thinking she might not be.
I don't think she could make it tonight.
This has been an important thing that we have been working on, and a couple of weeks ago we had a presentation from the Coalition for Healthy School Food, and they are the organization which across the country has been advocating for the provincial and federal governments to step up and fund universal food programs in our schools. And what we heard from the representative that we heard from for the BC chapter was that they felt they were making some progress. In fact, they were advised that because it's in the minister's mandate letter, which is what the Premier sends to the Minister of Education to say, this is what you need to do this year, this is one of the things. So we're looking forward to something happening on this in the next while. But with Trustee Dumore's urging, we adopted a resolution endorsing the work of the coalition, and just encouraging governments to follow through in what they've committed in this front. So I thought that might be an important thing for our PACs to know about, because I know how much our PACs have in the past been involved in some of the food programs in our schools. We also had a presentation last night for our Swiss workers, our settlement workers in schools. What an important program. And what we learned last night, and met a couple of new people, was that our Swiss worker of one has tripled to 3. And they are the folks who help our newly immigrated families make connections everywhere. Certainly schools are an important part of that, but into the community as well. It's important work they do, making sure that those folks get an understanding of how things work in this country, in our community, and how they can tap into some of the resources that they are going to need in order to make a new life in this country. And with what's going on in Ukraine, they said to us last night they expect there will be some Ukrainian families coming to our community as well. And of course, we're looking forward to that, although certainly not certainly regretting the circumstances that is causing this. Anyway, what else did I want to talk about? The other thing that I thought you might be interested in knowing about was the Ridge Meadows Community Action Team, which Trustee Dumore also sits on. And they are hosting an evening event. Some of you will probably already know about it. It's Say Don't Say Parents Night Out. It's a virtual event with a panel talking about how to have those very difficult discussions with your children, particularly about drugs, but I think the topic goes beyond that. Anyway, it's March 29th from 7 to 8:30 in the evening. And the last thing I'll mention is that we expect to receive a draft budget, following which there will be much consultation on April 13th. So it's at that point that we'll have a rough idea whether the degree to which the funding we receive that's allocated to us from the Ministry of Education will do all that we would like it to do, and so that we can do all that we would like to do. And unfortunately, it's often the case that things are tight and we have to make some difficult choices. And we're hoping that's not the case, and we won't know for sure until we get the numbers. But that's coming soon, so you might be interested in tuning in on April 13th. Anyway, I don't know if there's any other questions, or Corleen, did you have anything you wanted to add, or are there any other trustees that have things they'd like to add?
Nope, I think you did a great job.
Okay, sorry. I
No,
didn't
it
mean
was
to go
good.
on too long.
No, it's fine. I love that we
Corleen
share.
calls the mic, you talk too long.
It is not.
Thanks, Mike. Does anybody have any questions? No?
There is a question in the chat, Tanya, just around Parents' Night Out and how the parents can enroll.
What time
I'm
is?
not,
Yeah.
I don't have the information in front of me, but I know DPAC is a co-sponsor of it. But it's there's lots of flyers circulating around, so I don't know if you can find that information or not. Sorry.
Katie?
Yeah, I do know that. You can register for it on Eventbrite. I think that there is a link on our DPAC page, but it was a bit ago, so I will double check. And if it's not there, I'll post it right now, just so you can find it easily on our DPAC Facebook page.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good.
Do we have anybody here from MRTA? Just taking a look, and it does not look like it. Nope. QP, Jason?
Yes, I'm here. If you can hear me, hopefully.
Yep. Yes, we can. Yeah, Jason, we can't seem to hear you anymore, though.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, apologies. I've got my camera off because my internet is obviously unstable. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to. It's a short report. But thank you for having me. I haven't been able to attend many of these because I usually have QP meetings on Thursday night, so I happen to be freed up this time. So I'll just give you a quick rundown on what's going on with QP. So we do have, QPBC does have a campaign for public childcare. It's there, we have garnered some success with installing 20 pilots of the Seamless Day Early Learning Program in districts throughout the province. So, which is something that is great. It's a start. It's something I would love to see in this district as well. And the next step for CUPE is really looking at the before and after school care. This is, we think, a little bit more achievable because you don't have to rely on space in schools to do it, because it happens before and after school, obviously, when the buildings aren't being utilized. So, you know, we see that the facilities are really already there and there's no need for capital expenditures or construction. We do have trained staff available, qualified EAs that are already in place, and most don't currently receive full-time hours, so they're able to take on those extra hours. And for parents, it's a lot more efficient. You can basically drop your kids off at school in the morning and pick them up at the end of the day. No more running around to multiple locations. And then for kids, it means high quality care with more stability and fewer transitions throughout their day, which is especially important for children with special needs, for whom these transitions can be very difficult. So we are advocating for this. I know we've been doing it in this local for probably over 10 years now, for before and after school care plan. You know, we've presented stuff that really is cost neutral. So I'm hoping that there's an appetite for that now that this has been put under the umbrella of the Ministry of Education, because that is a change. I think it's something that a lot of districts are going to really have to look at. And I think it's something that the community and the parents have really been asking for. And really those buildings are for community use. And I think that's what we should start doing with them. So there's that, and I can try and find a link, because I think there is a page that asks for, you know, the public support to send letters to your school district and trustees and whatnot. So I can do that. And then the only other update I have is a small bargaining update. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, this is the bargaining year, and the K-12 committee is in the process of bargaining right now with the province, which I am a member of that committee. So really nothing much more to update other than talks are continuing, and hopefully they will end up going well. And that's it. That's my report.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Any questions for Jason? No? Thank you for coming tonight, Jason.
Sorry, I
Thank
have a
you.
question.
Yep.
I know my school in particular is really interested in the childcare, but there's been no talk on like which schools would get it. We're not that far ahead, right?
No, there hasn't even been talks at all. With, I mean, there's obviously the private daycares, but that's not what we're advocating for. We want this done in-house. So there's really been no talk about even potentially piloting this, which I'm hoping that's something we can do in the future.
Okay, but there's a link that might be put in the chat
Yeah,
about.
I'm
Okay.
gonna try and find one and put it in there for you, for sure.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next, I don't see anybody here from the Principals and Vice Principals Association this evening. So move along. Treasurer's report, Paulina.
Hey, so our gaming account sits the same at $6,480.60. Our general account sits at $5,814.38 for a total of $12,294.98. And that is as of February 28th, 2021.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Paulina? No? Thank you. Old business. There's none. New business. We do have new business. Craig, would you like to speak about the BCC PAC AGM?
Thank you, Tanya. I'm just gonna launch some links here in the chat. I think there's also some on the PowerPoint. I'm just going through this here. So BCC PAC conference and AGM are going from April 29th to May 1st. Registration is open and early bird pricing is in effect until April 7th. There are lots of travel subsidies through BCC PAC and our own DPAC. So BCC PAC is offering travel subsidies for 2 individual delegates per school district, with administration to be done by DPAC. How to apply? Apply a travel subsidy. The DPAC chair or designated representative must complete the online form for each individual delegate no later than June 1st, 2022. Only the most economical travel arrangements will be reimbursed. Eligible expenses are private vehicle. Mileage is reimbursed at 61 cents per kilometer, and public transportation. Taxis are not, and then the rest don't apply to us. They're for flights and stuff. Applications will only be accepted until June 1st, as mentioned before, processing within about 6 weeks after that date. May 3rd is when they will launch the subsidy form to be completed. PAC bursaries, free registration, travel expenses, a limited number of delegates, a minimum of 6, will be selected to attend the conference and AGM at no cost. This is for PACs, not DPACs. Will have the opportunity to apply to have travel expenses, accommodations, and the registration fees covered for their individual delegate. How to apply for that is to apply for a PAC bursary. The member must be a current BCC PAC member in good standing. The individual delegate must be attending both the conference and AGM. The PAC executive must complete the PAC bursary application form by March 27th, end of day, and the applicant will be notified if they're selected by March 30th. SD42 also has some bursaries. So we're going, or SD42's DPAC is going to fund the registration fees of up to 10 parents to attend the conference and AGM as representatives of SD42 DPAC. Deadline for DPAC reps to apply for interest is Friday, March 18th. Please email sd42dpac@gmail.com. It'll be first come, first serve. DPAC reps will have first rights, then it will be open to all parents or PACs of SD42 on March 19th, whether your PAC is a BCC PAC member or not. For the AGM for members will be held on Saturday, April 30th to Sunday, May 1st. The AGM will include board elections, review of budget and financials of the adoption of new resolutions. Proxy vote and proxy speaker forms. The deadline for those forms is April 14th. All regular members in good standing who paid their membership dues by December 31st, 2021 are entitled to vote at the AGM. And then all regular members in good standing who paid their memberships fees after December 31st, 2021 are only entitled to attend and speak, but not vote at the AGM. Resolutions, all resolutions and vetted resolutions can be reviewed on the AGM booklets that I sent the link for. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Craig. Anybody have any questions about the BCC PAC AGM and conference coming up? No? Okay, thank you very much, Craig. So coming up, we have our own elections. So we have nominations coming up. I'm trying to, just get things out of the way here. All positions are open for nomination. So we do need to call for a nominating committee who will receive those nominations. Is there anybody here who would be interested in receiving nominations on behalf of DPAC? Basically, you'll collect the nominations, contact the people to make sure they're interested, and forward them on when it comes time for elections. Anyone? No? we'll put that out by email then and see if anybody comes forward. So, and yeah, their nominating deadline, I believe, is May. No. Chris?
I think that'd be up to the nominating committee to,
Yeah, the nominating committee? Yeah, okay.
yeah, people can be, in our DPAC, people can be nominated from the floor at the AGM.
Yeah. So, yeah, we can. So if anybody's interested in just getting some emails, that'd be great. Thank you. Our executive elections, they are transparent. They are conducted according to our constitution and bylaws. A nominations committee is an important part of the transparency. So that is why we do ask for somebody who is not currently on our DPAC executive is recording the nominations and keeping track. So, yeah. So first call for nominations is usually called a month or more prior to the date of election, ideally 2 months. Then we have a second call, third call, and then the final call, it will be the night of elections before the election process begins. Okay. Only DPAC reps may vote in the elections. Any parent can be nominated to the DPAC executive. And you can win by acclamation unless there's more than one. If there's more than one person, then an election is held. We're currently holding them on Zoom. And if there's nobody standing for position, it will remain vacant. Finalizing the elections, we do call to have, in a more traditional sense, ballots destroyed. Otherwise, on Zoom, it's to accept the DPAC approved as presented or elected. Okay. Also coming up at our May 19th DPAC meeting, we have our upcoming Longtime Service Achievement Award and annual dinner. Now, with today's announcement, things could look a little bit different for the first time in a long time. So in the past 2 years, there hasn't really been a lot. It's been more of a traditional meeting on Zoom, but in previous years, it was generally held at a high school. Their culinary classes catered, and there was entertainment and awards, and it was really great. And all the DPAC reps were invited. So we need to look at doing that again. So please put that on your calendars for May 19th. And if anybody has any ideas for entertainment, or if what they'd like to see if we're going back into person, that would be great. And please message one of us, email, let us know. Does anybody have anything right now? No? Okay. So, PAC voice, sharing, open discussion. DPAC has received an email from the PME DPAC rep, Aaron Schwartz, and regarding the sharing of resources from maybe some of the less fluid schools to some of the more in between, and just making, I'm guessing, looking at a bit more equity within the district. So Aaron, if you'd like to go ahead and bring that up.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Thanks for having me. I just wanted to bring forth a question because it was brought up at our PAC meeting on Tuesday. And so it was just asked, do you know how a PAC could share resources or collaborate with other PACs to support each other with vulnerable kids in the district? So how can a PAC assist to help kids participate in a certain event or after school activity when there may be associated costs that some families are not able to afford, just so that no kid gets left behind? So.
Okay, I know there has been quite a bit of discussion in one of the provincial PAC groups on Facebook right now about this. Actually, a couple of PME parents and myself thought it was PME asking the question this morning. So, Vancouver DPAC does have a way for PACs to donate to other PACs. So it's And it's done DPAC. So a pack can go to DPAC and say, hey, we need this. And then another pack can donate to the other pack, but nobody knows who was who, if that makes sense. So that was one thing that I did see mentioned. And I actually spoke to the DPAC chair, he was emailing with the DPAC chair about that today for Vancouver. But it sounds like you're thinking more on the like the soccer type of thing after school, where it might have, or the United Way groups after school, where there is a cost associated with them. Is that correct?
I think it was more of a general sense of any way that can be helped out. So if it's maybe best to just go directly through DPAC to help that way, just an overall in a certain event or an after school activity. So that could be any of those things.
So because I don't know how many people realize the disparity across our district, but we have some very affluent schools, and then we have some that struggle, where their students their families may not be as solvent maybe, and especially right now with the recession, that's going to be happening more and more. And I don't think we want to see that happen, where it becomes more and more apparent. It's like things like the clothing drive, where it's like you donate and take, and there's no cost. The Hive, Eric Langton was doing one at the Hive, and we haven't had that in a couple of years, and that's missing. And so this kind of brought up a more broad kind of a discussion within even the DPAC executive, and that we felt that this was actually a good way to break into this. I know that some of going back to after school activities, I'm kind of all over the place. And going back to after school activities, some of them, there's kids sport, depending on what it is. Kids sport can be tricky though. I know that their income threshold is actually fairly low. And in this region, I think it's about $30,000 a year per family for income. And most families, I would believe, are probably more worried about keeping the lights on probably at that income level in this region than whether or not they're hitting the soccer field. I'll be honest, I know as a parent that would probably be like my big thing around there. So kids sport is very difficult actually to get, but it can help the kids who want to do those things. And then there's Jumpstart. And
can I add something, Tanya?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have talked to your CCW at school, but sometimes they can access different grants or community chest or different, programs or grants to help in that kind of situation. So maybe you guys have talked to your CCW already, but if you haven't, they'd be a really good resource to talk to.
Yeah. A lot of groups will actually offer bursaries or scholarships themselves. It'll just be like, okay, well, yeah, we always keep like a couple registrations aside that are free for the parents who can't pay for it. You'll find that probably in the majority of actual groups. Yeah. And some have written their letters to explain their situations in regard to kids sport, and some get approved. Yeah. So it's hard because PACs raise money for the school as a whole. And I can see where you're coming from, where you'd like to maybe be able to help support these kids. And to me, it's hard to not have it be an expectation, but on the other hand, to me, it's no different than like the Christmas drives that some schools do, where it's like, oh, we'll sponsor a family. Well, it turns out to be a family from that school, and the only person who knows is administration and the CCW. And you're using PAC funds to support that one child anyways, essentially. Right? So I can see a couple people nodding. I think you have to decide as a PAC on a whole where your stance is on this, and in a way to do this with some equity, like, so it's fair to everybody and nobody's being ostracized, obviously, but yeah. Does anybody have anything to add to this? Erin?
No, just thank you very much for the information.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything they'd like to contribute to this? It is an issue within our district for sure. Especially during COVID, and yeah. There is a lot of food insecurity within our district. There's a lot of kids who, like, yeah, they're going without, and yeah. Anybody? No?
It looks like Mike has something to say.
Who?
Mike.
Mike?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. This actually I was doing a strategic planning session for my Rotary Club actually just a little while ago. This subject came up in terms of opportunities, particularly after school opportunities for children in the community. And one of the things that came from our discussion was the need of a guide or maybe an online resource that lists all of the potential and available opportunities that are available to address the need. And certainly you mentioned a couple of them, whether it was Jump Start or Kids Sport, but also the, I'm not sure about Pitt Meadows, but in Maple Ridge, certainly there is a Parks, Recreation and Culture does have a fee subsidy program. As I believe does the ACT, the Art Center and Theater, for all of those programs. So there are many of them, but what I'm gathering from this discussion is the need for that broad resort or that resource to be kind of consolidated in a place where people might be able to get at it if they need it. And certainly our CCWs probably have all that information anyway, but it would be nice to maybe even publish something. So again, we were talking at my Rotary Club about doing something about that. So if it doesn't already exist, and it may.
Yeah. I know we had an email from Rotary for I believe it was Maple Ridge, and they're looking at donating. So there is, like, they want Rotary, I know, even wants to help. So it's you know, it's yeah.
I wouldn't mind chiming in here. Sorry, I did show up late because I had company over. They just left a moment ago, but I was in Coquitlam before moving to Maple Ridge and part of their football association. One of the things that we did was we started putting in a donation box for registration. And we would do like $5, $10, $20, basically saying, will you help sponsor a kid so they can play? Because as an association, we didn't have a ton of extra money, but we also had to be able to keep our heads above water. And the response that we got was great. A lot of people had no problem throwing in an extra, $5 here or there. And it worked out really well. The other thing that we noticed too, when we had to, when there were families that were going through funding, was the difficulty in compiling all of the information needed in order to even have a chance of getting the funding. So here, you have a population that is in need and has all of the additional stresses that go along with being in need, and now having to basically, put together a full-scale report and gather all of this stuff, which can be really problematic and one more thing for these families to have to do. So I think over as well as making a list of all the opportunities that are available, but also finding a way to streamline the procedure, which is something that they may have to do, like A4K or Jumpstart or whatever may have to do, but it would be great to be able to, somehow centralize that and simplify it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Nothing else to add to PAC Voice? No? Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Paulina. And seconded, Garibaldi. Thank you. All right, launch the poll, please. Okay. All the votes in? All right. And motion's adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.